Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're heading straight into the untouched, deep rainforests of Sri Lanka, and we're looking at a high-stakes scientific mystery. I mean, imagine walking into this ancient jungle, right? Where literally every rock you turn over, every tree you look behind, holds a secret the rest of the world is completely oblivious to. We are looking at a race against time, and here's the kicker. The biggest enemy isn't just habitat loss, it's a total lack of scientific recognition.
Just look at this number, 40. There are 40 newly discovered animal species right now in Sri Lanka that are completely undocumented by modern science. We're talking about entirely new species of snakes, spiders, scorpions, and some truly bizarre insects. Researchers know they're out there, but as far as the scientific record is concerned, they don't exist. They're stuck in this dangerous limbo, because if they aren't documented, well, they don't officially exist. And if they don't exist, we can't save them.
So, here's how we're going to break this all down today. First, we'll explore Sri Lanka's secret jungle. Second, we'll look at the threat of invisible extinction. Third, the 6 steps to document species. Fourth, the high cost of science. And finally, how you can save them. Let's get right into it.
Starting with Part 1, Sri Lanka's secret jungle, and exploring all this undiscovered biodiversity. So deep within the island's really dense, ancient rainforests, there's this nonprofit organization called BEAR that stands for Biodiversity, Education, and Research. And they are out there unearthing secrets the scientific world has literally never laid eyes on before. They're led by one of Sri Lanka's top conservation biologists, Dr. Ranil Naniyakkara, and his team works tirelessly in undisclosed locations. They actually have to keep these spots a heavily guarded secret, just to protect the vulnerable wildlife from poachers. But their track record? Absolutely incredible. Between 2009 and 2019 alone, they discovered 68 new species. That's everything from spiders to amphibians, and yeah, even mammals.
But look, this work, it is definitely not for the faint of heart. These jungles are just as dangerous as they are fascinating. The terrain is literally swarming with blood-sucking leeches that'll climb right up your legs if you aren't paying attention. Plus, the forest floor is dotted with carnivorous pitcher plants. And then there are the predators. Speaking about the endemic crate snake, which is one of the most highly venomous snakes on the planet, Dr. Ranil points out that if you're bitten, you need antivenom within 1 hour, or it will definitely kill you. It's an incredibly high-stakes environment where these researchers are literally risking their lives to find these undocumented creatures.
Okay, moving on to Section 2, the threat of invisible extinction and vanishing without a trace. Now, you might be wondering, why does all this dangerous fieldwork actually matter? Well, it's because if an animal isn't officially recorded by science, it cannot legally be protected, period. These undocumented species are facing huge, immediate threats: rapid deforestation, forest encroachment pushed through under the guise of development, and the really devastating illegal wildlife pet trade. The source material actually highlights some pretty tragic evidence of this. Researchers have found areas in the jungle where poachers have literally dug up the burrows of unclassified tarantulas to steal them and sell them as exotic pets. People are destroying natural habitats just to show off an exotic spider in their living room. And because these spiders aren't scientifically documented yet, there's literally no specific legal protection shielding them.
And this right here perfectly illustrates the stark contrast in reality. An undocumented jungle? It's basically ignored by authorities. That leaves the species living inside highly vulnerable to just vanishing forever without anyone even noticing. That's the invisible extinction. But once the species is scientifically documented, the whole game changes. It unlocks interest from global NGOs, it sparks research tourism, and crucially, it pressures the government to step in and officially protect the area. They might even designate it as a national reserve. Scientific documentation is literally the key to conservation here.
Which brings us to Section 3, the 6 steps to document species. Let's look at the rigorous scientific process.
To actually get that legal protection, researchers can't just snap a quick photo on their phone and call it a day. They have to follow a really grueling 6-step scientific method. Step 1 is exhausting field exploration. Step 2 is specimen collection, actually bringing the animal back to the lab. Step 3 is a morphological exam, where they meticulously study the anatomy under high-tech microscopes. Step 4 is comparative analysis. This often involves traveling to global museums to compare the new specimen against known ones to prove it's actually unique. Step 5 is molecular analysis, so things like DNA sequencing. And finally, Step 6, publishing a comprehensive research paper in a high-impact journal like Nature or Science and officially naming the species.
Now, I want to pause on Step 2 for a second. Specimen collection. Because something truly remarkable is happening here. Often in biology, scientists will actually kill a live specimen to take it back to the lab for study. But Dr. Ranil takes the highly ethical, incredibly patient approach. He captures rare live animals like tarantulas, houses them safely, and literally waits for them to naturally die before conducting his morphological exams. I mean, it is a profound testament to how deeply these researchers respect the exact wildlife they are trying to save.
And as a fascinating little side note, when researchers finally battle their way to the sixth step, the publication and naming phase, strict taxonomy rules kick in. You'd probably think discovering a new species is a quick ticket to putting your own name in the history books, right? Well, actually scratch that. Scientists are strictly forbidden from naming a newly discovered species after themselves. They must name it to honor someone else. Keep this rule in the back of your mind because it's going to become incredibly important in just a moment.
Okay, let's jump to Section 4, the high cost of science and funding the fight against extinction.
So, if this six-step process is so well established, and Dr. Ratul's team has already discovered 40 new species, why are they just sitting there waiting to be officially documented? Well, it all comes down to a massive financial roadblock. Fully documenting just a single species costs around 14 lakh Indian rupees. To put that into perspective, that's roughly 17,000 US. You have to pay field assistants for months of jungle work, buy really expensive lab equipment, and pay exorbitant fees just to get your paper published in credible scientific journals. It's an incredibly expensive undertaking. Breaking that down a bit more, 36% of that budget goes strictly to the lifeblood of the operation, the local field assistants. Another 21% is eaten up by lab equipment, and 18% goes straight to those scientific journals for publication fees. Now, before the pandemic, Bayer actually had grants to cover all this, but the source material notes a totally heartbreaking reality here. Post-COVID, that funding basically dried up. So without the money for expensive global museum travel to compare specimens, or the high-tech microscopes, or those steep publication fees, those 40 species are just completely stuck in scientific purgatory.
Which leads us to our final part, Section 5, how you can save them and the push for crowdfunding conservation. To bridge this massive financial gap, a super unique modern solution has emerged, crowdfunding conservation. A major donation, specifically that $17,000 we talked about, covers the entire six-step process for one single species. It pays the salaries, it covers the complex DNA analysis, and ultimately it triggers the legal protection of the animal's habitat. And hey, remember that naming rule we talked about earlier? In return for funding the entire process, the scientists will honor the donor by naming the newly documented species after them. For example, a newly funded species of tarantula will officially be named Poculivaria rathii, forever immortalizing the person who made its survival possible. How cool is that?
Furthermore, this money doesn't just stay locked up in a lab. It directly engages the local communities. 14% of that budget goes directly to local awareness. This turns the villagers who live near these secret jungles into the forest's most dedicated protectors. They're actually trained as forest rangers to identify these rare species and immediately report illegal poachers. It creates local employment and effectively builds a human shield around these highly vulnerable animals.
Ultimately, the survival of Sri Lanka's secret biodiversity now depends entirely on bridging this gap between initial discovery and official documentation. Without the funds to complete the rigorous science, these incredible creatures remain completely vulnerable to the changing world. So I'll leave you with this final thought to consider. Will these 40 incredible species be granted a name, legal protection, and a future? Or will they just slip away unnoticed, becoming tragic victims of the invisible extinction? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, stay curious.